Well, over in Germany, the government there is on the verge of collapsing over Europe's escalating immigration debate. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has 2 weeks to come up with a plan addressing the migrant crisis, or else her coalition government could be destroyed.
Some people in Merkel's government are demanding tighter rules over immigration. They want to close the country's southern border to migrants. So here to break it down for us is CBSN contributor Gabe Lipton. He writes for Signal, a newsletter produced by GZERO Media. Gabe, thanks for joining us. You know, Angela Merkel has been known for her open immigration stance, particularly when the migrant crisis was sort of reaching its head in 2015. Germany was open. Does this new pressure on her now threaten to maybe change her position, or at least threaten to see, will we see a difference when it comes to Germany?
Yeah, the politics of migration in Germany and Europe more broadly have been really based on a delicate balancing act between domestic politics in countries like Germany and France and sort of the EU's broader interest in burden sharing. In 2015, the EU introduced a new scheme that basically had two prongs. When immigrants arrived in Europe, the countries that they arrived in would process them, and then they would be resettled. The second part of that has broken down, and we've seen countries like Hungary and Poland and Austria take zero or very, very few migrants. So Germany, there's been an introduction of a bill in Germany to close the country's border, actually from a member of Chancellor Merkel's alliance partner, which is in direct contradiction of her, not only politically what she believes in, but what she sort of staked her legacy on over these last few years, which is keeping Germany's borders open and keeping Europe's borders open.
We've seen across Europe, Gabe, a wave of populist, in some instances, far-right anti-immigration leaders winning elections. In many European countries, we've seen that in Italy, we've seen that in Hungary, in Poland, in Austria. However, countries like Spain, France, in some instances, have recently stepped up to accept more refugees. What's the likelihood that Angela Merkel can make a Europe-wide deal involving other nations, even those that are going through some of these issues that we've been discussing?
Yeah, the politics of this makes it 2 times, 3 times harder because, as you said, we have sort of anti-immigrant governments who came to power on the basis of their proposal, their promise to shut their borders, to, you know, in Italy, for example, to shed 500,000 migrants back to North Africa. In the Middle East, in Austria, a similar situation. So it is really a very delicate balancing act for Angela Merkel, where she's having to deal with these new governments who she wants to keep sort of involved in the European project, but then this domestic challenge at home where people of her, people in her conservative party saying we've taken as many migrants as we can. There's a challenge on the far right with the emergence of a new party that is sort of staking itself out as this anti-immigrant party. So this is as much about domestic politics in Germany and these surrounding countries as it is about an increasing wave of migrants, which has slowed down but is still existing.
What about the impact on Angela Merkel herself? She's been in power for 13 years, but this last election was a nail-biter. It pulled her away from the world stage because she had to figure out how to sort of cobble together a government. Could this be the end of her career in politics?
So Angela Merkel has been giving a 2-week window from this sort of part of her party to reach a deal, EU-wide deal with Italy and other countries to settle some of these burden sharing issues. She will meet with other European leaders at the end of this month. She's meeting with Emmanuel Macron in coming weeks to sort of broach some broader agreement. Now, Angela Merkel is the Houdini of politics. She has been able to nestle her way out of plenty of tough situations, and there's been many times when people have said, she's done, it's over. 13 years in, you know, it looks like she can make this work, but it's a really delicate balancing act, and this is the first time that we've actually seen a challenge from within her party rather than from outside of it.
Right. Gabe, you know this. President Trump also chimed in on Germany's political crisis because he is facing backlash over this border policy, this no-zero policy with regards to immigration. He tweeted yesterday, the people of Germany are turning against their leadership as migration is rocking the already tenuous Berlin coalition. Here's the line I want to focus on. Crime in Germany is way up. The spokesperson for the White House, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, was asked about this yesterday in the press briefing, asking where did the president come up with that? Who has he been speaking to that tells him that crime in Germany is up? Because the numbers don't reflect that. In fact, I'm looking at Spiegel Online, which is a magazine of record in Germany. They tweeted this: asylum dispute in Germany. Trump disgraces himself with tweet full of lies.
No, it's absolutely, I mean, and it's important to say this, it's simply not true. So in 2017, crime in Germany actually decreased by 10%, and I think more importantly, crime among that involved non-German citizens decreased even more, by 27%. So the statement from the president is demonstrably false, and it's important to note that. I think it speaks to sort of the politics of migration, which we've seen heating up in the U.S. simultaneously on the border with Mexico, as it is in Europe. I mean, Trump has, throughout the campaign and after it, tried to align himself with more populist leaders and far-right leaders in Europe. He's seen them as sort of brethren, perhaps, in this broader cause, populist anti-establishment cause, right? And he, I think this is an example of him trying to cast him once again as sort of this sort of global leader on this for this cause. Right. You know, I think there is an interesting parallel as the migration story heats up in the U.S. about these two countries. In both places where fudges, in the U.S., a migration deal in 2013 in Congress didn't go through, and in Europe where there was a fudge about burden sharing, right? In both cases, politicians were not able to come to a common sense solution about how to handle the issue of immigration. And now today what we're seeing in both cases is these issues heating up, discontent at the establishment for not addressing these issues, and a sense that if only politicians had done something, we wouldn't be here where we are today. So this is not to defend the statement of President Trump, and this is not to defend a demonstrably false thing he said, but it's only to say that where we are today has a lot to do with where we've come from in the past and a sort of lack of common sense solutions, both in Europe and in the U.S.